everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Crossroads. I am your host, Petey Greene, and this is the show for and about environmental justice and those who fight the fight with skin as melanated as the days are long. Knowledge is power, and we are breaking down stereotypes one episode at a time. This episode is going to be a continuation of the discussion that has been had in the last episode regarding the current Maryland General Assembly, or as a lot of folks call it, the legislative session. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about some environmental bills that are being discussed during this time, and also just kind of break them down a little bit. And just for everyone's knowledge, this is going to be an appetizer, because some things you got to know about the legislative session is that it is jam-packed, like to the gills, up to the lace front, with things going on. You know, it starts in January, it's over with by April, and a lot goes on. And there's a lot of focus on Annapolis at this time. So I've picked a few bills, and I intend to track them to the best of my ability, because again, a lot of stuff comes up during session. But before we get there, we're going to give some flowers. So in the last episode, I mentioned that I was going to be honoring 3 people who have inspired me to start this show in some way or another. And the first person that I'm going to be giving flowers to today is Mr. Petey Greene. So I came to know Petey Greene through the movie Talk to Me, which came out in like 2007 and starred Don Cheadle as Petey Greene. And actually, his real name is Ralph Waldo Greene, but he went by Petey. So he was a radio and TV personality, homegrown, grew up in DC, and also when it was fought in Korea, as a Korean War vet, but actually was discharged because of drug use. And when he came back, unfortunately, he got arrested for armed robbery. And he ended up in the infamous Lorton Prison, which is located in Lorton, Virginia, in Fairfax County. And for those who live in the area and are familiar with it, you know that it's no longer a prison, but for a long time it was. And Petey actually got his sentence reduced. It was 10 years, and he was let out a little early because he convinced a fellow inmate to pretend that he was going to attempt suicide. And Petey Greene was his disaster coach, and coached and coaxed this man. First, he had to coax him into doing it. Then he had to, get him down off the ledge or whatever he was using to say he was going to commit suicide. And he was released a little early. And after he was released, he started his television career with a show on PBS. And that's public broadcasting, the public broadcast channel. And on his show, he talked about everyday life and the struggles of the everyday person. He talked about drug addiction. He talked about poverty. He talked about the criminal justice system and how it should be changed. He also founded the Efforts for Ex-Convicts, which was a program to help returning citizens, folks who are returning home from incarceration, assimilate into their lives. And he was also very, very critical of politicians. And that's something, again, that he and I had in common. And actually, he used his voice, he used his platform after the assassination of Martin Luther King to, voice the anguish, to voice the pain and the frustration that folks were feeling, following Dr. King's assassination. And seeing the movie about his life and even learning more about him, like there is actually there's folks carrying on his name and his legacy, continuing to do the work to help folks who want to have more knowledge and information about incarceration, who are returning citizens, who want to have help. His name and his legacy, continues on in that way. And what really inspired me about Petey Greene is the fact that, he had no problems being himself. He was himself wherever he went. And whether that was on television, whether that was on the radio, it did not matter. And even though it definitely didn't garner him much in the way of sympathy or empathy from politicians, he still, let them know how he felt. And I appreciate that, because in so many ways, that's what I see this show for. I try not to totally blast every single politician. I try not to do that as much, but I definitely believe, if you're going to represent me, you're going to represent me. And if you're not, I'm going to tell you about yourself. So again, he and I have that in common. So Petey Greene is the first person of my list of 3 that I'm honoring today, honoring his legacy. And actually, as I mentioned, there is a organization named after him, and they are actually having a few upcoming seminars. And I will put that information in the description box, as I usually do, because I actually plan to attend one on defunding, on talking really and truly about what abolition means. And I've done that before, and the work continues. Education does not stop just because you're out of school. Now let's get into these bills that I have selected. So this is going to be, as I said, fairly high level. I am going to get into some of the reasons about why these are important, but a lot of these bills are in the very early stages. So they have been written, they have been introduced, and they may be going up for hearing and for committee hearing, or they may not have yet. May have a hearing scheduled that has not been initiated. However, and this is a long process, right? This is a long road. So we have to keep track of this because so many bills are being introduced. There's so much stuff. If you go back and listen to the last episode with Nikki, you'll hear that, there are bills that are going on that are about police accountability. There's a lot happening. And that's a lot of the focus. A lot of the focus has been on police accountability. It's been on COVID relief, which is completely understandable. But there's also some environmental bills that are going on that are important. So first one on the list is actually going to be SB, and that stands for Senate bill. And that's to let you know in which house, either the Senate or the House, where these bills have been introduced. There's also a possibility that these were cross-filed, so that they were filed in the House, but also filed in the Senate as well. So I'm going to be reading both of those numbers. So keep that in mind. And if you go to Legiscan, or you can just go straight to the Maryland General Assembly website, they keep a track of all of these, of course. And so you can see where the bill stands, who is the actual delegate or senator that endorsed or is sponsoring this bill, and where it stands. So we're talking about SB 195, and this bill is focused on the ban of PFAS, and we talked about PFAS on the show before, in firefighting foam. As I mentioned in the episode about PFAS, or they're called the forever chemical, right? They were used in every damn thing. Hamburger wrappers, microwave popcorn bags, nonstick cookware, and basically it's in 99% of Americans' bloodstreams. And for a little more science, so PFAS can cause cancer, liver damage, thyroid disease, a decreased fertility, high cholesterol, and hormone suppression. Awesome. So I think this is a good start. This is one of the bills introduced by Delegate Lorig Charkoudian, and I do think that this is a good start. However, you did just hear me say that PFAS were in every damn thing, right? Not just firefighting foam. And yes, there were ample states that have banned the use of PFAS in firefighting foam, and I do think that this is a good start. But I would also argue that it's not enough. So this bill, as I mentioned, is fairly new. It's just been introduced into committee. And I will have to, I'm sure, break down these committees so that people understand. But there's different committees for different stuff. Bill number 1. Put a pin in that one. I'm going to have to keep a track on that one. Next bill is House Bill 0831 and Senate Bill 0723. Also another bill introduced by Lorig and Senator Katie Hester. And so this particular bill is to address food security and food insecurity that has been brought on by the pandemic. And under this bill, it would establish the Food System Resiliency Council under the Maryland Emergency Management Agency. So let's back the truck up. So first of all, for everyone's knowledge, every state has their own emergency management agency. If you're thinking like, that sounds a lot like FEMA, it is. So there's the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and then each state has their own. And actually states are grouped together in clusters. They're grouped together in clusters, and they usually will work together or collaboratively in some way, but it is how FEMA is responsible and keeps track of all activity is by clustering. And so what I would definitely say for anyone who is curious, as part of emergency management, there comes into the conversation about preparedness and what preparedness actually means. Now, as we saw from the full-ass debacle that was the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, we know that there's not really a good comprehensive, or there was not a very good comprehensive plan. And this is why, of course, there's emergency management by state, there's local emergency management as well by your county. And you as individuals and as someone who is part of a family need to consider having your own preparedness and your own emergency kit. So when we talk about what that means, if you don't have a choice and you have to shelter in place, which basically means wherever you are, you're taking cover, that you may want to keep, if you're, for example, not that we're really going to all of us have to worry about this, but if, for example, if you're at work, you might want to keep a pair of sneakers at your desk in case not in case you got to fight somebody, but in case you got to lace them up and run, right? You also want to make sure that in your bag you have a few items that you might need. I don't recommend keeping a knife in your bag, as someone who has done so and then had to declare it at certain places that we shall not name. You may not want to do that, but think about the things that you would need in a disaster and think about keeping those, close by. And for those who are interested, if I've just thoroughly freaked you out by mentioning this, which I might have, I'll make some time to actually discuss preparedness in a little bit more in depth. But in this particular case of this bill, this is more about food insecurity, which is difficult to be prepared for, right? Especially if you don't have the money, because that's another thing that even, in some ways, preparedness implies that you have the extra money to buy extra food or buy extra water in case something happens. So food insecurity is actually a major issue, and one issue in particular that brought me into sustainability in the first place. I was interested in looking into what the intersections were between food security and mass incarceration. And no surprises, there are plenty. So what do we mean by food insecurity? We mean that you, as a person or an individual living in your home, that you do not have access to nutritional, healthy food. It sometimes can be a proximity. So if you are more than 3 miles away from something that is a food source that is considered to be healthy, so an actual grocery store that sells fresh produce, fresh fruits and vegetables, that is considered to be a food insecurity. And the folks that are most impacted by food insecurity are seniors, are people living with disabilities, children, and obviously members of the Black and Latinx communities. And something else, getting a little deeper when we talk about our children, kids rely on the schools in some situations for their meals. They rely on it for breakfast. They rely on it for lunch. And if there's a snack that's provided, they need that too. So you can imagine what that's like in the summer when the children are not in school 5 days a week. So that's an area of insecurity, or a possibility for children not to have the meals that they need. We're talking about seniors who may or may not have access to transportation, who may not be mobile, who may just be living in their homes without anyone close by necessarily to help them. And also those who have dietary restrictions. These are all examples of food insecurity. And as we know with this pandemic, has dramatically increased. So that's what this bill is seeking to address. And again, very early stages of this bill. Right now, I think it's just, I think it's already had a committee hearing or it's coming up. So this is a good bill, I think, and something definitely I'll be keeping my eye out on. And in that same vein, there's also the Heat and Eat program. Heat and Eat. And that's House Bill 0101. And it's actually part of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and that's SNAP. And that is a federal program, and that's actually within the Department of Health Services, or part of the Department of Health and Human Services at the federal level. And in this specific program, the Heat and Eat program, this is for folks who pay their utilities through their rent and are eligible for utilities through their rent and have utility assistance. And they can claim a standard utility allowance on their SNAP application. And I think that this is a good thing to bring to the state and have at the state level. I would just also mention that, there are requirements to qualify for this program, specifically your income levels. So as you may know, there are federal poverty levels. And I get the sense very deeply in my shondo that I'm going to have to break this one down a little bit further, which I will. I have no problems. But there's certain guidelines that have to be met in order for folks to qualify. And not so buena. The next bill is House Bill 0280 or Senate Bill 0304. And this is requesting a repeal to the Maryland Recycling Act. Now, the repeal or the change that they want to make is the definition of what is classified as recyclable materials, specifically, in this case, incinerator ash. That's right. Incinerator ash has been classified as a recyclable material. Now, if you happen to go back to season 2, the Let It Burn episode, I took a really deep old dive into two actual very popular, very well known incinerators in the state of Maryland. One was the Wheelabrator incinerator, and that's the tall smokestack that you can see on 95 when you're driving up to Baltimore, and also the Curtis Bay Energy, which is actually the largest medical waste facility in the United States, all right here in the state of Maryland. So what's interesting about this is that the idea that incinerator ash, which is just basically the burning waste, is classified as recyclable. And it actually goes into much of what I covered in that last episode about the Wheelabrator incinerator, which is that it's a false narrative. This idea of waste to energy, that by burning trash that we are creating a source of renewable energy, which is the sweetest smell of bullshit, because that is completely not true. As I mentioned in that episode, and I'm going to say it again, incinerator ash or waste to energy only powers very few homes. Primarily, it's just to burn trash. And while it has been embraced as somewhat better than letting it sit in a landfill, and we've touched on the issues concerning landfills as well in this show, but just as a reminder, not all landfills are lined, right? They're supposed to be lined to protect the sewage or the seepage from seeping down into the groundwater. But not all landfills have a lining, and they are not necessarily routinely checked or maintained to ensure their integrity. And so there is a opportunity for groundwater contamination. And then on top of all this, there's opportunity for carbon dioxide to enter the atmosphere because there is decomposing garbage in a giant open space, right? And we also know, going a little bit deeper, we also know that there are opportunities for these places to be situated in Black and brown communities. And as I mentioned about the We Liberator and also the Curtis Bay Energy, these are located in predominantly Black and brown communities. And they are not contributing to people's overall health in any way, shape, or form. Another really good bill to keep your eye on, or for me to keep my eyes on and tell you about it, whichever. And last, but certainly not least, and I definitely am going to keep an eye on this because I want to make sure that we get the right folks in place on this. So we have House Bill 1207, Senate Bill 0674. And this particular bill is to establish an Environmental Justice Commission. Let's pull the car over. Let's pull the car over real quick. Now, what is important about commissions? So if you, again, if you have an opportunity to go back and listen to a couple of the interviews I did with Urban Habitat, they have a Boards and Commissions Leadership Institute, BCLI, that has other chapters outside of California that train people on how to join and be a part of and empower folks for how to be a part of commissions. And you're probably saying, okay, girl, well, why is that even important? Why should a person want to even be involved in this? And I will say that it's important for a lot of reasons. First of all, if you are a person with a lived experience, you need to be on those boards. You need to be on those commissions. If you are someone that knows about what goes on in low-income housing, has ever had a crappy landlord who doesn't fix stuff when they're supposed to, who is, but constantly raising that rent, and you're looking around like, girl, I don't see no granite countertops in this bitch. Could you please tell me why the rent's going up? Because it's definitely looking like hard times in this hoe. So I'm confused. You need to have your voice amplified. And being a part of commission, even though it is slow goings, even though it can be slow goings, it can be challenging. It teaches you other skills. It teaches you primarily how the system works. And that is why, again, I advocate very hard and very thoroughly for understanding your state and local legislative process, because these are the systems that impact you the most. I know there's a lot of happy joy and stuff about what's going on federally, I guess, but where the magic happens that's going to affect you the most, it's at the state level. So for this particular commission, it would be to work with the Commission on Climate Change and create projects that would help to address environmental justice issues. So of course, I think this actual commission has about 20 people or 20 slots, and some of them do have to come from other state agencies. But there is opportunity, I would say, for folks who have an interest to put it out there and try to become a part of it. And I think this would take effect later this year if it goes all the way through and is signed. And I would certainly encourage folks, if you are interested, or if you've been thinking about it and keeping a pulse on this and knowing that it was going to come forward, I would definitely encourage you to consider being a part of this board. And for those who are not in the state of Maryland, I would also encourage you to get with your local delegates, get with your state senators, and I would talk to them about the need to have this. So we're coming to the crossroads. And as we're entering in it, I'm actually going to bring in another piece. So we're going to talk about the Trans-Canada pipeline. A pipeline, yes. So first, shout out to the Chesapeake Climate Action Network for all their hard work that they're putting into making certain that this gets amplified. So there's work being done right now to establish a pipeline in Maryland, right? It's the same company that was behind the Keystone Pipeline, that's TransCanada. And even though the Keystone Pipeline has technically been, stopped by President Biden, this one, not so much. So why am I bringing this sort of like monkey wrench into the situation? First of all, to let you know that, yes, we have a lot of issues going on. We've got police accountability. There have been so many unarmed Black men killed in the last couple of years in the state of Maryland that it has sparked outrage, it has sparked protest, and it's going to continue. So yes, police accountability is a big topic, and for good reason. We also have to absolutely address the issues that we are facing currently as it relates to this pandemic. I don't know about other folks, but there seems to be some confusion going on about who can get these vaccines, how it's going to be, where the test centers are. So these are all things that have to be addressed. But all the while, there's also Larry Hogan and his neck made of fatback thinking that it is an awesome idea to put a pipeline through rural communities underneath or around the Potomac River, which is our what? Our drinking water. This is our primary watershed we're talking about, right? We have all these different estuaries and rivers that flow and create our watershed that flow into the Potomac and subsequently into the Atlantic Ocean. And this big-faced dummy is talking about, oh, girl, let's build ourselves a pipeline. No. Oh, no. And this is information that I was not privy to, but of course, I'm a gal about town, so I know some peeps. And so they let me know that this is what's going down, right? And this is what I'm telling you. So this is why I'm bringing this up. This is things that are currently going on, an organization that is currently working to address this issue and spread the word. And that is why I'm bringing it out. I'm talking about all of this and the importance of getting involved and using these organizations as an example of what people-powered movement is for and what it's all about. Petey Greene, as I mentioned, was very critical of politicians. He literally said that they put on those suits and they forget where they came from. Now, they may not forget where they came from necessarily, but their ambition, right? Their ambition means that they're a little less inclined to be as concerned about where they came from as where they're going. So for those of us who want to stay in the community, for those of us who want to make sure that the community is not some place that we leave behind, that is why it's important for you to get involved. That's why it's important for you to know these bills. Not every single damn one, because you will go insane. Trust me, I have tried, and I am nobody's policy wonk. I know people who do the policy and can tell me about it, and I try to do the best that I can to research it myself. But the reason that I'm doing this and the reason that I'm putting my time into this is because it's important, because it matters. So, I could talk more and more, and I will, because now that I've been made aware of this, I'm damn sure going to be talking about it more in the future. But this is why it's important to build your community and build your network so that you realize that you don't have to do everything. Especially when you can rely on me to do it or when you can rely on other folks to help you to understand what's going on. So as I said before, I mentioned the TransCanada pipeline. I am going to be keeping my eye out on it. I am going to be tracking these bills that I mentioned. And if you are interested in learning about what's going on, I implore you, I urge you, get to know your local representatives. You can, in fact, see them at the grocery store. You can see them at the gym. You can email them, and they should respond to you. And I'm going to tell you like this. If you don't like the response you are getting, you should feel free. You should feel free to let that person know. And also, if you feel called to serve, Go do it. I mentioned Gary Chambers Jr. I'm actually really proud to say that one of my friends who's a guest in residence on this show, Brandy Brooks, is running for county council at large in Montgomery County. So if you believe that you can do something, go do it. There is nothing to stop you. There will always be people who tell you that you can't do something, that you're not qualified, that you don't know enough. But I want you to know that that is all false and a false narrative, just like wasted energy. So again, if you are interested in learning more about the bills and where they stand for Maryland's legislative session, you can go to the Maryland General Assembly website. Also, if you do not live in the state of Maryland, but you want to keep a pulse on what is going on from a legislative perspective, go to Legiscan. That's LEGISCAN.com. It's a comprehensive database. You can track bills by state, so takes the guesswork right on out. Now let's move into some shout outs. So if you follow me on Twitter, you know I tweeted out and I was just looking around, just trying to see something. And I just wanted to know if there were any Black-owned skincare lines. And I actually was very fortunate. I got a few people to respond to me. And so I'm going to give them shout outs as promised on this here program. First is Tiana Skin. So that's TIONNESKIN. And they have organic lip, hair, and body care products. I did check the website out and it looks amazing. And I definitely recommend giving them a check if that's something that you are interested in. There's also Nija Butters, and that is a vegan skincare for dry, sensitive skin, acne, and hyperpigmentation. And last but not least, we have Poetic Soul Bloom. They sell butters, body oils, and bath salts. I looked again at the website and it's like she just described them as calming, girl. I was like, yes. And the prices are very reasonable. All three of the businesses that I mentioned all have very reasonable, very affordable prices. So please check them out. Please support, not just because, we are still in this good and Black ass history month, but also just because we have to start supporting our community. These are folks who did not know me from a can of paint. I just put out something and they responded, and now we have an ecosystem. So that's how ecosystems work. And last but not least, I did mention her already, but shout out to Delegate Lorig Charkoudian, who a lot of the bills that I mentioned today, she has put forth herself. She is a delegate in the state of Maryland, District 20 specifically. And she was very gracious enough to respond to my emails, because I'm telling you, they will respond to you. And if they don't, vote them out. But thank you to Lorig for providing me some of this information on these bills that I've been able to discuss today on this show. So breathe in, breathe it on out. This is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And I hope you enjoyed the content today. Understand that it will be more to come. And we will see you again at the crossroads.